What is up, guys? I'm Justina Victoria, and this is the newest episode of So Hard podcast. And today I am here with one of my favorite people of all time. Will, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me. I guess as it comes to me, I am a coach. I am a mentor. I'm somebody who supports people with their nervous system. That's one of the big pieces. And expanding consciousness in through the nervous system. And I created a method. I call it the neural awareness method. Justina knows a little bit about it. I've color coded a bunch of different states of the nervous system and use that to help people navigate to more ease and flow in life.
Yes, I was one of those people.
Yeah. And you can get quite far away from the ease and the flow, and it's actually mind-blowing how far away you can get from ease and flow. Like it's really shocking.
Yeah, it really is. So I wanted the theme of this podcast to be about how I don't even know how to put it, like healing is possible. And it's not even just like, oh, I could like heal. We're talking like be cured, like completely cured of things and things that we are conditioned to believe that we cannot be cured of. And I really wanted to have this conversation with you because I feel like you and I have been through like hell and back, and we've cured ourselves of things that would have been impossible, or according to like, standard medical, community have been impossible. So what I wanted to do was I wanted to start off by talking about narratives. Like what is a narrative, and like how do destructive narratives affect your nervous system and your ability to thrive as a whole? Because in my opinion, like looking back on my journey, that was the main cause of everything for me. And we'll get like deeper into our stories and stuff, but I wanted to start with this because I want people to understand, like, where do you start? Like, if you want to heal, okay, like we need to look at narratives. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would. Narratives it's crazy because it's like there's a story in your head, but you might not even know there's a story in your head. It's very strange how we can be unaware of something we're constantly telling ourselves. So it can be like something you tell yourself so much that you can't even hear it anymore. It's like a song playing in the lobby of an elevator. You just tune it out. You just tune out that narrative, and it's a story, and it's the way that you're painting your experience. And it may or may not have come from childhood. It may not have been inherited from other people or family or whatever, but it's there. However it got there, it's there. Mm-hmm. And I think of the narrative as like the key point of the feedback loop between your body, your brain, your nervous system, and the cycle of energy just going over and literally to create a pattern. So you're like, I have a pattern. And the pattern is created from the physiological, the emotional, the sensation, the body. And then it goes all the way back up to your narrative, and then you re-trigger it, and it keeps on cycling over and over. And that's why it can seem like, oh, I just keep feeling this way. I just keep doing this. And it's because there's no interruption in the narrative. It just keeps spinning. And so the state just keeps coming back.
And so when you say pattern, because I feel like that word is used a lot, but it's so expansive. I feel like it's a energetic thing. It's a physiological thing. It's a biochemical thing. It's a hormetic thing. It's a neurological thing. Like it's a behavioral thing. Like, can you explain a little bit more about like how narratives create patterns and like what a pattern is, or like make it kind of like tangible for the people that are listening?
Yeah. So when it comes to neural awareness, like the neural awareness method, like think of 6 different colors, 6 different types of patterns. You can be completely dissociated, disconnected from your body, reality, your perceptions, your sense of self, your, even your feelings, your thoughts. You can be in panic. That's a type of pattern that can be there as well, which is like you're just completely overwhelmed, freaking out. And everybody's freaked out at least once. Like we all know what that's like. You can be shut down, depressed. You can be frozen, which is when you're really stuck. You want to take action, but you can't. You feel blocked. And then you usually criticize yourself for whatever reason. That happens for a lot of people in public speaking. Then you can be in a people-pleasing mode where you're so focused on other people and how they feel that you forget about yourself and your own needs. Or you can be in a pattern of stress where you're fighting either life or other people. You're confronting, you're trying to overly control everything, and you get fatigue from that eventually. And all of those represent different types of patterns based on the behaviors that you experience involuntarily, based on the thoughts that come up involuntarily, and based on the sensations that you experience in your body. And they all come in very predictable forms. The thing is, for most of us, these are completely like unconscious, right? Like you don't even know you're in a pattern, you're not noticing it. You're like, oh, this is just me. I'm just always pissed, or I'm just always this. But that's what unblending is all about. That's what like the ability to heal fully, right? To cure yourself is to know that that's actually just a pattern. It doesn't have to represent like your life signature, like where you end up going.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not the destination. It's not your personality. It's not like something that can't be changed. That was like for me, I always felt like when I first met you, like there was no coming back from like what I was experiencing or what I had experienced. And you would always say to me like, no, like you'll get to a place where like you won't even really remember this. And I was like, yeah, right. Like, but it's true. And it's kind of crazy because we do live this life where we get stuck in a certain pattern in the way we like perceive things over and over and over and over. And they like build up. So we think like, no, like that thing happened and this thing happened. And it's like, you almost like never heal from those things. So you're like, yeah, how would I ever forget this? How would I ever move forward? How would I ever change? Or how would the outcome ever be different for me? Because you just don't realize like that you're blended with a way of thinking, really. And it just keeps perpetuating itself over and over. So I think that's really interesting to point out as well. And the way that I see that health, emotional balance, will, love, masculine, feminine energy, power, confidence, wholeness, these are all things that are like natural to us. Like we already have all of these things. They exist in this moment, inside of everyone, because it's just that is what we are. But it's that like when we have a narrative, I see it like a wedge. And this wedge like cuts off connection between you and like what is already a part of you. Right. So it's kind of like a kink in a hose, is the way that I see it. So the water is there, but you're seeing the absence of the water and thinking like, I have no water. There is no water. I will never have water. It's never going to happen for me. Right. But most people don't realize that like the thought that they have no water is typically the thing that comes first, which is very weird. It's actually like hard to convince yourself and other people that that is the case. Or they do experience like something weird where like the water disappears for like a short period of time for some reason, but they make up a meaning that it's like never coming back, right? Or something like it will just keep doing this forever or whatever it is. And like that's why to me like this work can be a bit mind twisting when you first start. And we think in a way that makes us believe that life works in this like certain sequence, and that sequence is truth. But in actuality, that whole thing is just like a complete illusion. Like, does that make sense? I feel like maybe it might be a little too like vague, but
No, that I like to use the word illusion. I feel like sometimes people misunderstand it, but I feel like the way you explained it is exactly right. It's like the way that you're habitually perceiving things is the illusion. It makes it out to feel like it's one way when it's not. And then we can think of like you can feel like it's just so much harder than it is because you're just out of touch with how actually easy it can be. And like how all those things like flow in naturally, like you talked about, like all of the good qualities come naturally. I thought of this the other day, like if you are in you have the wedge, like you talked about, you feel this wedge between you and the lack of water. You have the kink in the hose. And so then you can't even see how easy things can be. And I thought of a kind of a fake experiment or a fake like idea, which would be like, imagine if you're like, okay, the task is I have to get 100 gallons of water into the sky, like 30, I don't know, would it be, no, it'd be like 2 miles high, something like that. And you're like, holy shit, how am I going to carry this water? How am I going to get it up there? Not realizing that it's literally just let the sun do it.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yes.
just let the sun do it.
Yeah.
And so what happens is, like, for whatever reason, if you're trying to get this water, it's almost like you're blocking the sun from doing it. You're trying to excavate it. You're trying to put it in tubs. You're trying to, pay the pilots, fly the plane, get the water up in the air. And you're doing this crazy mental gymnastics to try and get this water up in the air that is just going to completely evaporate and go up into the clouds on its own.
Yes. Oh my God, that's so accurate. Yes. That's what I've been working on lately is like through my journey, I was so disconnected from feeling like there was anything out there that was bigger than me. So like not from like a really religious standpoint or like, oh God, or like you can believe in whatever you want. But for me, it was like, it was exactly that. If there was ever a single problem that came into my mind, that problem was 100% true and needed to be solved right now by me because there is nothing else. Like there's no other support. There is nothing outside of me that can fix this or protect me or provide for me in any way, shape, or form. Right. And that goes back to like, the reason you're even thinking that way to begin with is the state of the nervous system that you're in. And you have no idea. You just think like, this is how life works, right? It's like, it has to rain. I need it to rain. Otherwise I'm not gonna be able to grow food and I'm gonna die. So I need to like somehow like get the water up into the sky so that it can like evenly distribute on the ground so that I can have, like that is how most of us are walking around. Like problem solving every single thought. That is literally like if I could describe my life previous to where I am now, previous to meeting you, it was every single thought was something to be solved. It was 100% true. And it needed, like, I had to do something about it because there was no one and nothing outside of me that was going to take care of it. And so now what I've actually started doing, which is like the next, and we'll talk about the journey up until this point, but like where I'm at now is this feeling of like, I have gotten to a point in where my nervous system is healed so much that I actually feel connected. And like, maybe you could talk a little bit about how when you're in different states, you actually start to feel connected to something outside of you or other people or like life in general. Mm-hmm. So I'm kind of at that point now where that is how I feel all the time is like, there's something like I'm connected to everything and there's something bigger than me that really cares about me and wants to see me thrive. And what I've been doing is like when I come up against something that feels like I just can't, like a thought pattern or some kind of pain or some kind of situation that I feel like it's exhausting me and I feel like I can't solve it. I'm just like, okay, I'm actually just going to hand this over to like the universe, to God, to whatever's out there, spirit guides, loved ones who passed on, whatever it is. I'm going to give this to you guys. And I'm going to trust that this is going to be solved without my input whatsoever. And it's so amazing because you come up like, and like I said, we'll talk a little bit about the journey, but it's like you come up these states of survival that make you feel like you're like everything's out to get you, everyone, everything, God, like whatever exists is there to harm you all the time. And as you heal your nervous system, all of a sudden you're hitting states where you're like, whoa, I used to be like that. Like what? Like life is actually not that scary, right? And like, whoa, I'm not going to die every second of every day. And so now like you hit those other states where you're like, well, I'm actually supported by something bigger than me. So I actually believe like after going through this and continuing forward, excuse me, I feel like connection to God is actually related to the state or like whatever you want to call it, right? Mm-hmm. Something bigger than you is actually just connected to how healthy your nervous system is. Would you like agree with that?
I actually totally agree with that. That's one of the reasons why I got so into the nervous system is because I felt when I experienced bliss, when I experienced like what I call like the heightened state of ventral in the nervous system, it's just an undeniable reality that like there's spirit, there's God, there's like magical unity, support all around. And it's so compelling. It's not like a feeling of like, oh, maybe. You're just like, whoa, okay.
It's accurate. Yeah, you're like,
Right.
this is it. Yeah.
Yeah,
And when
this
you're
is
at
it.
the bottom, it's 100% that nothing exists and that you are going to die and go into blackness and disappear for all of eternity.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with that. I think that there's the deep existential terror of like the void and like no light, no life. And that's embedded within dissociation, which is, I think of the nervous system at like the furthest away from love to the most connected to love. And like that's kind of how the nervous system works. It allows you to access at a body level the different vibrations that are more connected or further away from love.
Yeah. So
Mhm.
let's talk specifically about the narrative that I cannot heal, that I will be like this forever. I have ED or performance anxiety or weird kinks or porn addiction, and I'm fucked up. I'm an alcoholic because it's in my genes. I have too much trauma. I have PTSD or dissociation. I have an incurable illness. And the interesting thing to me about all of these perceived problems, like they feel like permanent, scary problems, because like you and I both went through some of these things, right? Is that they all have the same underlying narrative, which is that there's absolutely no way to heal this kind of stuff because there is no cure and it's permanent. So says the internet, or my doctor, or my AA meeting, or the thing I saw on TV, or my psychologist, right? And at this stage in the game, like I can honestly like wholeheartedly say that like everything I've seen in like all of my clients and applying this stuff, right? Healing and wholeness are available to everyone, like no matter where you're at. You just don't realize that it's about you getting out of the way. Just like that metaphor you use where you're like, oh, you just let the sun do it. Like your body knows how to heal, right? Your nervous system, your brain, like your life knows how to come back to homeostasis. It's that we are getting in the way because we're like, when we go into those dysregulated states, we feel like it's not going to work out for us.
Mm-hmm. We're not trusting.
Yeah.
That's exactly it. Like when you're not trusting, and then you're either, because you don't trust, like completely collapsing and giving into that hopelessness, so like letting the energy fall away, or just overdoing, trying to control everything because you just don't trust. And then both of those like just distort the natural free flowing energy through the body. Like when that's coming through your body, everything starts to come back into balance. It's actually, and that was like the thing that I've been telling people for so long, like well-being is the natural state. Like it's label and let go, not label and fix. Like label and let go is the technique of mindfulness, where you just notice what's happening and then take a short pause and then you just let it go. And that is so hard for people when you're just like used to label and, okay, but how do I fix it? Like, how do I smack it, force it, beat it up? Like I want to drown it.
As
I
a
want
lab
to
experiment. Yeah.
yeah. And but yeah, it's ultimately that. It's the trust. And it's such a mirror, because the nervous system is just mirroring your relationship with life. It's mirroring your relationship with other people, with yourself, and to something much larger. It just like mirrors all of that.
And I would say that the mirror, or the relationship itself, is the sort of the culmination of all of your narratives, right? It's like the way you think and the stories that you tell yourself is really the base of those relationships, I think, anyway.
So did you want to get into what to do, like how to like kind of like a, like with the narratives, with somebody who's in any of these situations you talked about, like they have anxious attachment, they think they can never heal, they have a terminal illness, they have something, they're feeling lack of hope for whatever reason.
Yeah, I had that at the bottom of this, like my outline of like concluding with like a formula that people could maybe just start to like enact. But we can talk about that now. If it's like coming up in your mind, like I want this to be so yeah.
Yeah. the first thing that I talk about in, like, I created this like list of like 10 principles that you could use. The first one is it's commitment. And so it's like this idea that you have to believe that you can heal and healing is possible for you. Like, this is step one. If you don't have that, then what you're walking, where are you going? Every step is going to have doubt. So you have to believe that healing is possible for you, well-being, ease, flow, and maybe even bliss is possible for you. You have to believe that. And if you don't believe that, every step's going to be filled with some sort of a doubt or a hesitation or a double thinking about it. So you got to believe that. And then, so what are the reasons? Like, why would you believe that? Well, at the body level, you and I both know that they have neuroplasticity. Like, we literally know that you can reshape, you can rewire. It's like, it's a physiological fact. Like, your nervous system can rewire, and your nervous system controls and dictates so many of the other hormonal, immune, and, cellular changes in the body. So we want to just know the nervous system through neuroplasticity can change, and then those bodily changes can downstream affect literally everything, to the degree to which you're sick with something, to the degree to which you're emotionally challenged by something.
What about addicted to something?
Addicted? Totally, because you're going to be addicted to something usually when you're in a freeze response, which is, we'll get to that in a little bit. If you're in a freeze response, part of you is feeling stuck, and then another part is trying to manage or mitigate that feeling of stuckness or self-criticism or guilt or shame with the addictive choice, whatever that is. And so if you don't have that feeling of stuckness, you're just naturally not going to want to do the thing.
Yeah.
Like anytime I'm in a feeling of stuckness is where I reach for the things, whatever it is for me, whether it's a food thing, whether it's an Uber Eats for something that I'm just like, I'm full, but I'm ordering this anyway. Like, whether it's sugar, whether it's shopping, like, you just stop reaching for the things when you don't feel that lack in the freeze, which is occurring at the nervous system. So totally, addictions too.
Yeah.
But where was I going with that? Yeah. So the first one is neuroplasticity. And the real question I like to ask people is like, why not believe that you could heal? Like, there's literally no downside. The only downside people are worried about is like, okay, but what if it like doesn't work? It's like, it's already not working. So just why not?
But you know what you used to say to me at my worst was, you only have one option, and that option is to heal. Like, that's your only option, is to heal. And when you made that for me a non-negotiable, when it wasn't a non-negotiable, because I would just be ping-ponging back between like, okay, like maybe it's possible. No, it's definitely not. Like, I don't think it's going to happen for me. Like, I don't know anybody else that's done it or whatever, And when you would say that, you would make it, like you said, the commitment is almost like making healing non-negotiable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it. And that brings in the devotion, that brings back the part of you that's willing to keep coming back and keep coming back. And then that part is needed to make those any kind of long-term shifts. But so the first step, like in this idea of a formula, would to be to notice and become aware of which state of the nervous system is implicated in your issue. And it might be multiple different parts, but usually it's going to be one predominant part, one predominant state. And that could be the dissociative piece. So for example, like for people who are really super disconnected after some kind of overwhelming experience, it might be that. But if somebody else is panic, then to just notice, okay, so the top thing is panic. Or if it's shut down, like literally full depletion, full hopelessness. If it's freeze, if it's like this back and forth, this tug of war, so like, I want to do it, but I can't. I feel blocked, I'm judging myself, like I'm holding my tongue, I'm not expressing. Or if it's the feeling of people pleasing, like just overly trying to make everything perfect to present it to other people. Or if it's just general stress, which is also very common, where you're just working way too hard, not being able to turn off, or just being aggressive and battling your experience or your emotions. Once you know which one of the states is involved, then you can bring mindfulness to it. You can give it a name, you can give it a reference point, you can literally just label it. And anybody listening to this, you'll be dealing with ones that are on different areas of the spectrum, but you have to really be self-honest. This is the piece that's really challenging for people. It's like, I just want to pretend the issue's not there. But if you pretend it's not there, then you can't really expand through it. like for somebody who has a chronic health condition, there's almost every single case I've ever seen, there's been a nervous system state implicated into it. And people want to be like, no, it's not that. It's literally just happened to me. Cause like everyone hates me. Cause like life is mean. There's almost, I just don't know an example. And I know other people who have, been into this would agree. There's almost always a nervous system piece, which is an unconscious body piece. It's just part of the unconscious mind stored in the body that's having that effect. And so then to figure out what is it, and then you can just get really clear. Okay, so I'm dealing with a freeze response that's very strong, that's been habituated for this many years. This is the story. This is the narrative. This is what it says. Now we have a way to reference that experience, that part of the consciousness, without just being like, that's me. This is the way it is forever. You have leverage. You need that leverage to be able to see, okay, this is a state. And when this state is strong, it says this. But also you'll notice is that the state fluctuates. I would tell you this before. It fluctuates in intensity. So you'll notice, okay, one day it's like the freeze or the panic or whatever it is really strong. And another day it's strong, but maybe it's just like a little bit less. And to just be able to notice, okay, so it's not like an absolute thing.
Yeah.
That helps the mind work with leverage. Yeah, because what happens is you have the catastrophizing, you have the eternity thinking, which is where basically you just paint everything with the color of that state. And you're like, it's just always that way. Even when I'm happy, I'm still that. I'm still frozen. I'm still this. You just start to paint everything that way. And instead, you need to have that leverage to notice it fluctuates. And the more you notice it fluctuates, which is kind of like a Buddhist idea of like impermanence, you can see it come and go in like waves, or maybe it doesn't go completely, but it just dies down a little bit. Mm-hmm. Then you get that leverage to be like, well, if it can die down a little bit, what's to say that it couldn't die down a little bit more? Mm-hmm. Or what if it could die down a little bit more? And then all of a sudden now it becomes a lot more dynamic. And that was what helped me get free from chronic panic attacks when I was dealing with it, was that I realized, well, at one point I was like having a 24/7 panic attack. And I know not a lot of people are going to relate to that, but the people who do will be like, oh, dang. Yeah, I remember. Yeah. And then I just noticed like, okay, there'd be certain points where it would be like just noticeably a bit less, like just noticeably a little bit more tolerable. And I'd be like, okay. And I would just take a mental note. I'd be like, interesting. Like I would write in my journal, like, okay, today was like it was like still horrible, but it wasn't like level 10. It was like a little bit less. That gave me leverage and gave me the understanding that, okay, things are fluid. They're more fluid than I think. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a necessary understanding to bring in with the commitment piece. Is like, okay, you're committed to healing. Things are a little bit more fluid than you think. We often tune out the little changes. We tune out the little moments because we want to paint that brush with everything about how the state is.
The black and white.
Yeah, the black and white thinking too. Mm-hmm. And then the narrative is, well, it's kind of the main topic of this conversation that you wanted to bring up, the narrative, to be able to see. And sometimes it's hard to tell, but when the state goes stronger, what is the mental story that comes up right parallel alongside it? And there's almost always going to be that when the state becomes stronger, meaning the body sensations and the behavioral impulses become stronger, the story is going to go stronger at the same time. And in a way, that's one of the ways it can give you a clue. It will like actually like tell you its secrets. The state comes stronger and the story comes stronger. And then you can become more aware of, oh shit, okay, the story is coming along. It's saying this. It's usually a belief. It's a belief about me. It's a belief about what's possible. It's a belief about the world. And it's very cyclical and it's very self-confirming. And so to notice when those happen, then to be able to have awareness around the narrative. And then the big technique that I would share with you, I call non-narrativization, which we could talk about if you want.
Okay.
Just basically just being present.
Yeah, let's do that one at the end.
Okay.
Okay, that was amazing. And it's very helpful. Like, I think, see, most people who are watching this are not going to really know about the nervous system states. This might be like their first introduction to like understanding the nervous system. And I would say, like, if they want to learn more about that, to just go on YouTube and just start watching videos about polyvagal theory. So it's very simple, very straightforward. It's just about how your vagus nerve functions and how, like, your emotions are produced, I would say, and the states that you experience that feel super extreme or real and true. I like, when I started working with you and you taught me all of that, it just took everything I was experiencing and brought it down. It didn't fix it up front just from knowing that, but the awareness that, like, oh, I'm experiencing this because I'm in a certain nervous system state, and this is normal, natural, and predictable for that state, was just like, oh, like, I, even with clients, like when I go through this stuff with them, like I will never forget, I had a client who we did our nervous system maps, right? So he did his, and then I read mine to him. And he, like, I read out my thoughts, you know, and my feelings and my thoughts, my feelings, and my what's the other one? Thoughts,
It's
feelings.
sensations. I don't know. I do mine with behaviors, thoughts, and sensations. But
Yeah,
like
behavior. That's the
somewhere,
one I was looking for. So my
yeah.
behavior. And so I was reading this out to him, and he literally was staring at me like, and I was like, "Are you okay?" And he was like, "You think like that?" And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "You feel like that?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that's the state of the nervous system. That's the freeze state or the sympathetic state or whatever." And he's like, "I'm not fucked up." And I was just like, "No." I'm like, "This is how everybody gets when they get into these states. They're predictable." And it was just like such a beautiful moment that I will never forget, to just see somebody have this moment of realization that they're just not a piece of shit, right? Like, they're just like, they're like just struggling, right? And they thought like their thoughts were like weird or whatever it was, right? So, you know, I think that you and I are like the poster children for healing, in my opinion. And you did it first, right? And you showed me that it was possible, which I'm like, for, you know, I say this all the time, I'm like forever grateful that you came into my life. And the fact that, like, you never gave up on me, because there was times where I was having complete and utter absolute meltdowns. And your belief, right? I think this is the beautiful thing about being a coach, is that your belief is what changed my narrative, right? Like, you never gave up, no matter how I was like, I am so blended, I am so convinced, I am so seduced by this fucking narrative, and it is true, Will, and you don't even know what you're talking about. And you just be like, no. I'm like,
I just like, just the narrative talking. I'm like, can you feel that the dorsal is strong right now?
The dorsal,
or like whatever. The dorsal is strong right now. Like I would say the same thing if I was in that state. Like, it's completely normal.
And for me, it was like, when we started working together, I was still in the middle of active medical trauma. Like, I had a severe autoimmune disease. I couldn't, like, I could only eat 5 foods. I was in and out of like, you know, experimental treatments and, you know, clinics.
Honestly, it was pretty insane. Yeah, it was pretty wild.
Insane.
Like, it was like,
yeah,
like probably, yeah, one of the most intensive medical, just in and out of everywhere that I've like ever seen secondhand.
Yeah. And it was just like, there would be days where I was like, I am dying. My body would be like in such a state of like PTSD, dissociation. And then on top of that, like whatever the disease was doing to me, right, which was terrifying. And I would be like on the phone with you, like, and you're like, I don't even know how you like maintained your composure, but you were always just like, nope, you're going to heal. Like, nope, you're going to heal. It's going to be okay. And so your belief, right? Like, your unwavering belief, because you talk about the commitment, sometimes we can't get there. Sometimes we need to borrow that from someone else, right? In the beginning. And that's what I needed. So it was like, your belief helped to change my narrative. And then slowly over time, I was able to just incrementally start to collect evidence for what you were teaching me. And like, I think it would be funny if you could like maybe just share with the audience like what my narratives were like when you met me.
It was basically like the worst possible narratives you could have. Like reality, like I don't know how much have you shared much about like that time on your podcast?
I have like, yeah, I have a couple other episodes and like some posts on my Instagram that I've shared. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a complete utter existential terror. It was like, not only are you in the worst like medical emotional moment, but like it's like it was truly like suffering death before death was even there. Yeah, I mean, and that's like what it was
dying,
like
you're dying all day every day, but you don't actually just drop dead.
Yeah.
Just die already, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, and that doesn't sound like, it might not compute for certain people, but that's what it feels like when you're having a panic attack. Like people, I say this all the time, but people go to the emergency room all the time because they're having a panic attack because they think they're dying. So when you're having a panic attack 24/7, you literally do feel like you're dying all the time. And so then that can bring on the dissociative piece, the existential terror. And like, of course, there was so many other flavors too, right? Like there was the part of you that was really feeling victimized by the whole situation and feeling hopeless. And that was like the shutdown. And then maybe it would go into freeze where you would like, okay, I've got to try to do something, but I like can't. It was literally bouncing around the whole spectrum.
And I was also like grieving and heartbroken because my partner at the time like abandoned me when I got sick. He was just like, bye, never talk to you ever again. Right. Yeah. So there was that. And then I was also going through all of that essentially by myself because like my family didn't know how to help me and they were so like scared of what was happening to me that like I just ended up like in a bed by myself pretty much every single day. So it was like as intense as you can possibly get, I would say. And I like to highlight that because it's like, if I can come back from that, which I truly did not think was possible, even when I met you, you were like, it's going to happen. Like, and we would go, like, this was like, what, like 2 years ago at this point, which is insane. I can't believe it's been that long. And I just think like, I look back on everything and I'm just like, I'm a fucking superhuman. To like come back from that and to thrive afterwards and to have no PTSD, no dissociation, no nervous system dysregulation typically on a daily basis. Like I wasn't even dysregulated before I got sick, right? Obviously, which is why I got sick in the first place. But like that to me is the impossible. That to me is a miracle, like an absolute miracle. And so that's why like I really wanted to talk about this today because I want people to understand that no matter what they think is permanent to them, the most extreme mental health, the most extreme trauma, like sexual dysfunction, addiction, all of these different things, that it is possible, like when you truly understand how to heal, like you said, through neuroplasticity, that you can actually become a person who is totally cured of that. They don't experience those things anymore. And I'm curious if you would be, because you did say like before we got on, like if you would be willing to share some of your own journey and some of your own insane narratives that you had going on when you were at your worst, and like what, because you had some autoimmune stuff as well and like different things, like what your like rock bottom was compare, and like how your life is different now.
Oh man, there's so many rock bottoms. I just have to pick a good one. Truly, I mean, the reason that I created this map, right, is because I experienced pretty much each one of the states so intensely. So each one of them presents their own type of rock bottom. Like when you have a freeze state, like to the maximum, which I've had is for sure as well. And, or when you have dissociation to the maximum, I would say that would probably be the pinnacle rock bottom. Cause that was like going to the rock bottom and then like getting sucked through the wormhole. Like you're like, oh shit. You're like, the bottom doesn't end. Like that was the feeling.
Yeah. It's free falling forever.
Yeah.
Black abyss. Yeah.
I thought I hit the bottom and then it like broke.
Yeah.
And then I was like, I mean, part of my narrative was like, I thought I broke reality. I don't know how to like explain that, but
Yeah.
it's not,
I
I
feel like you
thought,
can only understand that if you've had dissociation. It's kind of hard.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, I had definitely had that. A panic attack narratives was, oh yeah, I told you this one. I thought that the sun was causing me to have panic attacks. I thought that, and you thought, I mean, maybe you still believe, I don't know if you still believe this, but you thought like salt was making
Nope.
you have, yeah. I believe the sun was making me have panic attacks. I believed that zinc was making me have panic attacks. I believed that I swear at one point it never really got in there, but I almost like there was almost like a narrative coming in of like maybe the like government is making me feel this way. I don't even remember. It was kind of vague. It was like that them. You know what I mean? It was like just a paranoid delusion of like they like they like put something in the water supply or something.
Yeah.
And I just one of the ways I know I began to see that these narratives were false is because they would just change so much. Like especially in panic, it's kind of a like it's kind of a panic is a very glutamate intensive state. So it's like you're thinking 100 thoughts at once. So the narrative will change. It's likely to kind of change from time to time. And I noticed that. So I was like 1 second, I think like, it's zinc causing it. The next second, I thought that going in the sun was causing me to have panic attacks. And it was to the point I would be covering myself up and trying to not go in the sun because it just felt so real to me. I don't know how to explain it. Like that's what a narrative is. It doesn't feel like a narrative. It doesn't feel like you're just telling yourself this. It feels like this is the ultimate truth for you in this moment. It couldn't be any different. Like this is true.
And you
And
have
so that's how I
evidence.
felt.
You have evidence for it.
I had a lot of evidence. Every time I would go in the sun, I'd have a panic attack, right? So that was my evidence. it was foolproof, right? It was a foolproof, the
Yeah.
scientific method, and I had 100% success rate every time I go in the sun. I have a panic attack, and so it was just real to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that definitely anytime I've been shut down, when I've been really, really shut down, I remember looking in the mirror and just seeing no hope.
Mm-hmm.
Seeing no hope in my own eyes. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't see hope for myself. And I remember looking at myself and I'm like, I have like the energy of a homeless person right now. Like, I don't see how I'm going to pull this together into anything. And that felt real to me in that moment, right? Like, that felt like the truth. That felt like the ultimate truth of like what's possible for me. And that's
It's
one of the
interesting
things.
you say that because I actually hit that point with dissociation where I'd be on the train or I would be walking and I would see a homeless person and I would be like, I completely get them now. Like there is like this thing where you think like a person gets to a point where they're so dysregulated or they're so dissociative or they're so like deep into like drug use or something that you're
Mhm.
like, I get that person. I get their suffering now. It's very weird.
I felt that too. Like when I was in dissociation, I felt connected with everyone's suffering more than I had ever before.
Yes.
But I also felt isolated from it. Like I felt like I had the worst suffering of all the
Yeah.
suffering. So there was that too, which is kind of the ultimate victim. Like no one will ever understand like how bad I had it. Like
Yeah.
that's part of the narrative there as well. But yeah, I did relate to like everybody who's ever just had an issue
Mm-hmm.
because I felt like I had the ultimate issue. Like anybody who's ever like been like, fuck, what am I gonna do? I'm really stuck with this. I'm like, I feel that so much. um but yeah, I don't know what to tell you. Just to be honest, I feel like I've had a lot of narratives. I've had a lot of different narratives, a lot of different ones. Some of them made sense, some of them don't. um so many of them, like once you like they're no longer relevant, you just actually completely forget about them. You're just like,
Yeah, I agree.
you're like, wait, what? I used to like worry about that. um Now much more what I'm focusing on is on the subtle levels of freezing and pleasing, because I feel
Mm-hmm.
like these are the most sneaky states. So that's where I'm bringing more attention with myself and with helping other people, because I feel like those subtle, super sneaky, super little tiny in the background residues of freezing and pleasing is what's cutting off the hose, the flow to deeper like bliss and flow state, and like where it gets to be not just good or great, but actually magical and incredible.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. That's kind of where I'm at now too, which is kind of crazy. I do think too that it's important to note that, like, you know, we laugh about these things, but these were like crises, like in our lives. It was like we actually could not function as a whole human being, right? Like you can't. I mean, like you're so consumed with the state of your nervous system and you don't even know that that's what it is. You just think like something has, like you said, broke reality. And like there's no coming from it. You can't change it, whatever. It feels so real and so true. Um, so what I wanted to talk about next is like, okay, so this is where I wanted to really get into, because I feel like I have never had addiction issues, right? Like maybe I was addicted to like thinking and certain thought patterns, right? But like I have never been a person who had addiction or struggle with any of that kind of stuff. But I find it fascinating because I have it, like it comes down through my lines. Like both of my parents are children of alcoholics, and neither of my parents were alcoholics, but you can see the destruction in their nervous systems, which then they passed down to me. And then I look at my life and it's like I've been married twice, right? And both times I married alcoholics, which was very random because like I don't drink. I haven't had a drink since probably 2018. I just actually do not care about alcohol or drugs in any way. And like, it's bizarre to me that I ended up with people who were like that. It's probably more the nervous system state that I found familiar, right? Or like, you know, whatever, found like it was more something that I resonated with. So it's like, because even like my ex, he would be like, you're an alcoholic without ever drinking, because of like the way my thoughts would be or like how my nervous system would function, right? So but this is the thing is, from being around it and hearing, you know, like my whole life, the way that they structure AA and going to AA meetings with like people that I know, I think AA or a program like that is phenomenal because it takes somebody who is just in complete crisis to stabilizing them. But then that's it. There's nothing beyond that. It's just, you are this way forever. You have a disease, you have condition, and you will always have to white knuckle your way through life, and you will relapse, or you know, like it is this thing that you are powerless to. Like when I go to the meetings and I listen to the language, it's just like you're powerless. And every time you stand up to say something, hi, I'm an alcoholic, they're like doing this, like this is my identity. It's really, like I said, it's a phenomenal program from going from like 0 to like 5. Then once you hit 5, then what? And so I was curious about your take on nervous system and addiction, and if you could actually just completely cure the cravings, because you have a bit of addiction in your background. If yeah, okay, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 100%. I was addicted to many different things. This was before I knew about the nervous system, before I knew about like all that type of stuff. Drugs, that was the main one. All different types, all different ones that you swallow, ones that you snort, and ones that you smoke. And and it was a challenging thing, but it's cool that you bring up the AA piece, because what happened to me and I kind of, I want to say I snapped out of my addiction. Like almost like I snapped out of it, like I was in a trance. And it happened very, very quickly, but there was a big buildup towards it. And once it happened, it was just a period of 2 weeks where I just realized like, that's actually not who I am. So that's interesting, because you're saying about the AA piece is like, I'm an alcoholic, this is who I am, I'm powerless to this. And we're also giving credence to the stabilization period, which is, you know, when you're really, I want to say far gone in the experience, you might need that, you know, desperately. But then ultimately, the nervous system and the patterning that you have, if you are totally identified, totally believing that this narrative, that this is who you are, basically what you're saying is that the version of you that's addicted is the real you. And I got unaddicted by no longer believing that. So basically I went from like all these drugs and addictions to all of a sudden just doing like yoga and meditating and drinking lemon water and like doing this before bed quietly with myself. And it was sort of like I just came to it. I was like, oh, that was never me. Like
Mm,
that was never the real me. Like,
mm,
and there was almost this realization, like I've always actually been fine. I just never really took the time to like land in my body.
mm-hmm. I'm so glad to hear you say that, because that has always been like my deep, like heartfelt belief that like that isn't who somebody is, right? And like, because even when I look at like my grandmother, who I adored her, she was an alcoholic, and it was just like I can't even like perceive her as that person. I'm like, that's not who she is, like on the inside. And it's like, like she was experiencing so much pain, so much dysregulation, right? And it's like, well, who would she have been without the nervous system dysregulation? Like, would she be an alcoholic? I highly doubt that. Right. So it's like something that it's amazing to hear you say that, because it's like you literally one day the narrative changed, and then within 2 weeks you were just like, I don't care. Like, so like what you're saying to me is like, once you took on the identity of somebody who just isn't that anymore, and also did the work to regulate your nervous system, you actually just don't care about it anymore. Like, you don't have cravings for it anymore. Like, you don't have to go through life being like, oh, there's somebody's doing drugs over there, and like, oh, don't even look, because like I might want that.
Yeah, I guess I can only really speak super, super confidently from my own experience, but it I didn't have to white knuckle anything at all. And you said like once I don't know if you said create or like connect with the identity. For me, it actually just felt like letting go of a false identity. Like that's what it kind of felt like. It was like that was never really me. Like
Mm-hmm.
I was, yeah, doing that because I was out of touch with myself. And you're right, just when I was doing yoga, which involved breathing, involved stretching, and involved like a quiet space with myself alone at night, that was meditative and meditation. That was nervous system work. I didn't know the term at the time, but I was spending time. I was truly slowing down. I was saying, okay, this is for me. I'm not going to go into storyland. Like, we're going to make this very meditative. I'm going to like set the mood. And I'm tuning into different people. I'm tuning into Ralph Smart, Infinite Waters Diving Deep, that guy on the internet. You know him, pretty popular guy. I'm tuning into good influences. I'm tuning into people who have positive things to say, and I'm in that new energy.
Mm-hmm.
Then two weeks later, I go to see my friends that I used to, like, let's say, do different things with.
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden, I feel out of place. I feel like I'm in the wrong, like, I'm like, I don't belong here. Like, this doesn't fit who I am. This doesn't fit who I feel myself to be.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like, what would be a good example? Like, I felt like a skier who like went to the beach. Like, I'm like, just, I have the skis, I have things, but like, this is just the wrong place, the wrong people, the wrong activity. It's just like, it has nothing to do with me.
Mm-hmm.
And so it just shifted really quickly, like where I just felt like none of these things have anything to do with me. I just feel completely out of place here. And so it was completely natural to be sober, to be natural.
So
For me,
in essence, would you say that like it has felt for you like effortless, like an effortless sobriety? Would you say that, like, since you gave it up, or
I would
since?
say that the hardest part was when I was trying to let go, but didn't.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense? The
Yeah.
hardest part was when I was like still doing it, but then being like, I don't want to be doing this. Like, it's like I didn't have that number one thing, which was like commitment. Like the idea that like, okay, if I let go, like I can heal. I believe that. I didn't have that. I was like, oh, I want to, but I like can't. And so it was very much like back and forth. But once I
Mm-hmm.
was like basically all in, then I wouldn't even say it was like effortless or effortful. It was just like, oh, this is who I am.
Mm-hmm.
And then like
It was just like
that,
alignment or something.
yeah, alignment kind of, I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah. Okay.
And just to put into context for anybody listening, like I had like 5 or 6 near-death experiences, like close to drug overdoses, like things like that with the drug. So it wasn't just like, oh yeah, just smoking weed and just having a good time. It was like, it was pretty out of control.
Yeah.
I had a friend like sit me down and being like, because I was doing certain drugs, then I would do other drugs the other day, and then the next day I would do other drugs, and some of them would like contraindicate, so I would have like crazy side effects. My friends would like see me go through that, and they were like, dude, you need to like stop, you need to chill. So yeah, it was my version of the real deal, and everybody has their own, you know, experience, their own versions and own challenges with it. But yeah, that's what I see. So, but the deeper thing is the freeze response.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about this.
I have yet to see a drug or an addiction where somebody doesn't have a freeze or a functional freeze response. I just don't see it. Now, the thing is, people bury it very deeply. Doesn't mean it's not there. And you know what I mean? They might have the perfect house. They might present in all these ways, but if some part is frozen, which means it's blocked, it's stuck, it's unexpressed in them, that causes a slight pressure, a slight tension, a slight numbness, just always there. And it's that numbness, pressure, tension that makes people want to feel better, to self-medicate, whether it's shopping, whether it's like, okay, I just need to get like Chinese food with MSG, or whether it's drugs. It's that thing, I think, which causes people to use addictive behaviors and patterns. And we all kind of have that. Like, I know when I crave foods from a very impulsive, unconscious place that are super stimulating, and I'm like, why the heck, why am I craving this? And I tune into my body, I'm like, oh, I'm in a freeze response. Like, there's a subtle freeze response here. And I'm like, that's exactly what the unconscious reflex is to do, is to self-medicate it through something. Could be a stimulating movie, could be a binge on Netflix, could literally be a million different things, but it's to try and do that. So I think what happened with me when I did the meditation and the yoga and staying up at night and doing like lemon water and all the ways I cared for myself and connecting with like Ralph Smart online, I was connecting with the part of me that was frozen. And the part of me that was frozen had all this knowledge, actually. Like, I spent time like learning about little bits and pieces of meditating since I was 16. And I knew it was powerful and I felt it to be something incredible. But yet I was blocked on that. I was stuck with that. That part of me was frozen. And actually, by just starting to do those things, it's like I unlocked that part of me. And I was like, oh, I'm like bringing myself present. Like, I have all, like, this is what I'm interested in. This is what I'm like, actually, like, this is what I would do if I was healed. So I'm just doing it. And in doing it, it like opened up just access to the part of me that was stuck. When I was using different drugs, it was like that part of me was out of the picture. And I was just bouncing back and forth between like the shame guilt cycle of like not doing what I felt I should be doing, and then trying to self-medicate that pain with other things and escape, and then using the drugs to try to have positive experiences and like really seeking that. I tried to seek that as much as I possibly could. Like, I thought that at that time, to me, like the key to happiness was like the right cocktail of drugs. It's like, that's how you experience like bliss, is like, you just have like the right amount of like MDMA with like, you know, you put that other thing, and then on the come down, you'll like have that. Yes. And then that's the key to happiness. Like, that's how my mind would think, because I was out of touch with endogenous like well-being.
I'm curious then, like, if you stop the addiction, but you don't heal the freeze response, then what?
Probably going to replace it with another addiction. Or if the freeze response turns into a fight response, which is kind of normal in some cases, then you start white knuckling. And so then you'll start white knuckling with other things too, because the nervous system is universal, right? Like, whatever your response is, you're just going to start to do that with everything. You're going to white knuckle through your relationship. You're going to white knuckle through your job. And so it's like, do you want to be in that fight? You know, do you want to be in that stress? Ultimately, I don't think we want to be in any of the dysregulation states like chronically. We want to use them when they're appropriate and then come back into like ease and flow as usually as quickly and as deeply as possible. Like, that's what we all want.
Yeah, they're for emergency use only. not to
It's
as a
it's
lens to
emergency.
experience life through.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Like, and that's the crazy part. Like when I experienced like the fight flight response, like true stress, when I was chased by a pack of coyotes at 2 a.m. when I went on a walk in the forest at night, it was actually awesome. That's the thing, when they're actually appropriate to the situation, a lot of the responses, like they feel, it just feels correct. It's just like,
Yeah,
oh yeah, I should be in fight flight right now.
that was aligned. That was normal. Yes.
Yeah, I should be in fight flight right now. And so it was terrifying but exhilarating. And when I went back into regulation, like part of me was like, that was awesome.
And that's what's so interesting to me about the narratives, because the body and brain can't tell the difference between real and imagined. So whether you like lose your job or imagine losing your job, your body's going to produce the same biochemical response and nervous system state, right? So you can't like run, fight, freeze, or play dead from a thought or a belief system or a story. But the body, like that isn't going to solve it. But the body's still going to produce that behavior or that strategy, and all it's doing is like causing you to essentially become toxic, because all of your systems, like you were talking about before, your immune function, your reproductive system, your digestive system, on and on, they all go on low power mode when you're in the stress response. So you're like envisioning this horrible thing, worse. And then because you're in that state, and like you said, it's self-feeding, you're in sympathetic, and sympathetic is pumping out worst case scenarios. So you had like a thought that was habitual that started the sympathetic, then sympathetic is like now pumping out more worst case scenarios. And you're just like, you can't run, fight, freeze, or play dead from a thought process. There's no way of getting around that, right? So you have to actually stop the narrative, stop thinking that way. One of the most powerful things that, and honestly, the most powerful thing you taught me was being skillful or masterful with your focus, right? But I think if you boil every single tool, every single strategy, every single spiritual practice, every single guru, whatever it is, it all comes down to the simplicity of focus, right? And so I wanted to say, like, beyond that, like one of my favorite things that you ever said to me was, can you make space for miracles? So this kind of comes full circle to like the beginning of what you were saying. And that was probably the most important piece of my healing process, right? Was because it was like, once you start to practice letting go of the how and shifting your focus away from the intrusive thoughts, right? Like, and making healing non-negotiable, right? It's like your brain and your body and the universe give you whatever you're focusing on. So like if you're focused on dying, like I was for 20 years of my life, because I had a death phobia and I had, extreme health anxiety, and like every piece of food I ate was like, what's in this that's going to give me cancer, right? So of course I got to the point that I was at. My body, your body's always listening to you and it's conforming to your thoughts. But now I don't focus on things like that. Like actually to a point where like I can eat, I had every food allergy you can imagine. The doctor literally, I should actually put this in the video, like a screenshot of my food allergy test when I had it done. It was everything on there except there's like 200 items that were like all red. They were like,
Whoa.
wow, you could eat salmon, cinnamon, lemon. I was like, I actually cannot survive. I can't even eat food, right?
Yep.
Like, oh, how am I going to survive on fucking cinnamon? It's just wild. But it was like I went from that to being like, how could I ever eat food? Every time I'd eat a piece of food, my body would go into a panic because I programmed myself that way, to doing the complete opposite and shifting my focus away from that and believing that I can heal and focusing on healing and seeing myself healed. You actually said that. I think that's a big part of it as well, is like focusing on the healed version of myself, right? And what would the healed version of me be doing right now? And that's what I would start focusing on. Like, I don't care how many sensations I have a day that tell me I'm dying. I don't care if I can't get up and walk. I am putting this over here, and I am just, this is where I'm going. It's non-negotiable. And so that's like a testament, right? Because like I don't have any food allergies now. I had food allergies since I was 6 years old. And it was so funny because even as recent as like a few weeks ago, I don't know what was going on. Like I don't remember exactly what was, that's how little I focus on health issues now. It was like I don't know if I was like had hiccups or had a stomach ache or something really random. And one of the girls was like, "Oh, it could have been something that you ate." And I was like, "Nope."
Mm.
It wasn't something I ate, but in the past it would have been like, oh my God, there was like a seed in this like raspberry, and the seed contains like this molecule, and that molecule is like murdering me.
I love how it's like it's out to get you too,
It wants
which
me to die.
totally makes sense with like the panic state, right? Because panic, like one of the core attributes of panic is like paranoid delusions. And
Yes.
so like paranoid delusions can infect your life in any which way. It can look like people, it can look like food's gonna murder you, like the way you said it, like even painted it kind of like that paranoid delusion feeling is like,
Yes, every food
yeah,
was out to get me. Everything I drank and ate was going to somehow try to kill me. And that's the thing, is because it comes with a biochemical equivalent, like it feels totally true. So like as a fellow healed person, like would you agree that like your focus is the most important piece of it? And like also being like just making space. Like I loved that when you said that to me one day, because I was just like, oh my goodness, oh my goodness, right? Which is like classic freeze state. But you were just like, what if you just like made space for a miracle? And I was like, oh, okay. Like, I guess I could do that, right? And it's so true. Is like when you stop and you're just like, this could like actually resolve itself without me doing anything. And then the freeze states
yeah.
regulate, right? And then you're like, oh, things are actually moving. And because like all the states, they convince you of a certain thing. Like freeze state convinces you that you need to like try harder and like push more and keep going, right? And it's like, actually the antidote is just like, what if I made space for a miracle and I actually didn't even have to do anything? I didn't even need to figure out the how or whatever. So it's just like it's interesting because like that is an example of focus. I'm focused on like, I'm the one that has to fix this. I need to find the solution. And then you're just like bloop over here. What if it just a miracle happened? I didn't have to do anything. It just healed on its own or fixed itself or resolved itself. And like you can just feel the nervousness. Like Dr. Joe, he always says this one thing. He's always like, the body always follows the thought. So it's like if you have a thought about going to the refrigerator, the body just gets up and follows the thought to the refrigerator. And we do like more like that's a simplified version of all the complex narratives that we have. It's like if every single day I have a thought about what is in this food that's going to give me cancer, like the body is just following. Like, and this is one of the things I do with my clients
Mm-hmm.
now is I will literally sit them down and be like, okay, close your eyes. And then I have them like imagine eating a lemon and their mouth starts salivating. And then I have them open their eyes and like, I want you to see that there is no lemon, but the body is producing a biochemical equivalent to what you're thinking about right now. Close your eyes again. Okay, now I want you to imagine that the person you love just abandoned you. They're like, right? And I'm like, cool. Okay. Now imagine like you're on your last vacation where you just literally experienced like bliss and ecstasy. And they're like, holy fuck. And I'm like, okay, so like you see how your body is producing all of these chemical states by thought alone. So your body is doing that thousands of times per day, right? And if you're not aware of the thoughts you're thinking or the narratives that you have, and if they're not aligned to what you want to experience, right? That's the whole point of focus, is like, this is the destination I want to go, whether it's healing, whether it's success, whether it's love, whatever that means for you, this is the destination. If you don't keep your mind on the destination, because most people are thinking about the opposite, right? That's what I was doing. That's what you were doing, right? Then you just see wherever you place your focus is the experience and is the destination. And I just think that is just, that was one of the most powerful things, if not the most important thing that you taught me when we
Mm-hmm.
worked together. Like, would you agree yourself with that? Like your
Yeah, I mean,
experience?
you just shared so much and there was so many kind of juicy pieces, but one of the things that came up is this idea of pronoia and paranoia. That's what I was just thinking about. So paranoia is like when we're in these very negative states, it's almost like the other word that came to mind is like reverse manifestation. Like you're actually creating everything you don't want.
Yes.
You're like, oh no, don't happen, don't, oh God, it's happening. And you're like, just everything you don't want, you're just like, you're aligning to it, right? Like you're thinking about it, you're fueling it, you're leaning into it. And I remember at one point I was so out of it, I was visualizing myself at the mental hospital in a straitjacket. Like that was where my brain was going. Do you know what I mean?
That's so scary. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And then I realized, because like I'm somebody who knows about like energy and alignment, I'm like, oh my God, I'm gonna like manifest that. And then I was like getting paranoid about the fact that I was paranoid, and it was just really circular in that way.
Yeah.
And in that moment it was totally real. But then on the other side, you have pronoia, which is kind of what you're talking about here, which is really, it's the belief that the universe is conspiring in your favor. And it's what that faith in like the sun evaporating the water up and just being like, I don't have to lift 3,000 gallons of water. Like the sun's going to do it. Like it sounds like a crazy amount of water. It sounds impossible, but the sun can do it in a single day, And in that same way in the body, like just trusting your intelligence, your body's organic intelligence. And that's where like the trust in like a creator, like trust in God, trust in spirit, trust in the universe, whatever you want to call it, is going to come through. And it's imbued into your body. Like that intelligence imbued into your body will allow that process to happen. Just like the sun does the work on its own. That's why it's the higher power, because like you're not actually doing it. It's doing it for you. You have to surrender and just like let the sun do its thing.
Oh,
and
it feels so good. It feels so good. That, oh my God.
So that's the pronoia. That's the just belief that the universe is conspiring in your favor, or like that there are forces conspiring for you.
And I feel like that is only possible if you are in a regulated state. Like I felt like I could not access that from dysregulation.
Right. You couldn't effectively access it when you're highly dysregulated. You can access glimmers when you're moderately dysregulated. When you're mildly dysregulated, you can kind of play with it. And when you're very regulated, the universe becomes, or like the world becomes your oyster in a way, because you're like, whoa, where I'm focusing on, I can feel things are really beginning to work in that way. And it starts to become quite magnetic. And then, when you're highly regulated, that's where it becomes like a kind of an out of this world experience. Like, and I've had some big moments of that, and definitely leaning into that into the future. But like where I would visualize something and I'm like really feeling like this feels like it's totally going to happen. Like, I don't even feel like I'm trying to manifest something. I don't even feel like I'm trying to like have an experience. I'm like, this just feels like it's going to happen. Like, it's just going to happen. Like that was the feeling. And then it did happen. One of the ones I'm thinking of is I taught a breathwork experience at a festival. There's like 125 people, and it was super transformational and emotional. And some people told me it was the best experience of their lives. And there were some people who are high on LSD, and I think that's why it was the best experience of their lives as well. But I remember just like in the middle of it like snapped to my awareness, like, holy shit, I was envisioning this like just a few months ago. And I'm right in it right now. Like I have a VIP pass to the festival. Like I'm in my element right now. Like this is it. And like, this is what I saw.
Yes.
And I almost forgot about it until I was right there. Was like,
yes. Shit. That has happened to me many times, of like doing scripting, writing stories, and then all of a sudden they come true. And you're like, that happened to me actually when I was in Ireland this last time. I was just like, you're standing there, and all of a sudden, boom, you're like, oh my God, I envisioned this like exact moment. Like, what the hell is happening right now? It's so amazing. So
yeah, you know what? I just got one quick one, because one of my clients told me this today. She's on a trip somewhere in Europe to see sacred sites, actually.
Oh, cool.
It's like a pilgrimage trip, like kind of, a sort of spiritual pilgrimage / like just transformational event trip retreat thing. And she said that they did this exercise where everybody would put their hands together and create this like bridge, and you like walk through it, right? Like if you can imagine, two people touch their hands and put them up above their heads, and then there's another two people, and you like walk through this gateway. And it was some sort of a symbolic ritual to like let go of who you were and walk through to something new. And she told me she realized while she was doing that, that like she randomly, for like no reason that she knows, like has an image of that on her like vision board. Like she's like, I don't even know why I put it there. It's like, oh, that just looks cool, kind of cool. And they're like just people like putting their hands together and like somebody walking through like that. And
that is wild.
She realized it when she was having that experience. She was like, oh, part of me like really wanted that experience. And like, I didn't know that that was a part of this retreat, but like she aligned to that retreat and then she had that experience.
Yes. Yeah. I see. That happens to me a lot. And that happens in my clients' lives a lot. And you would think too, like working with men, guys would be very like manifesting, you know, right? Like, and I won't even present it to them that way. But the second, like I start teaching them this stuff, they're like, yes, I want more of this. You know, they script and they come in and they're like, oh my God, the story I wrote down came true. Like, what the fuck? Like they go wild over it. It's so funny. It is amazing. So I want to kind of like wrap up so it's not too long, but before we like get into the formula piece that you were going to share, I just want to like create a little caveat here, because this journey of healing is very difficult. Right. It wasn't that we just like changed the narrative, right, and like learned about the nervous system and like life was perfect. Like it took several years for me. I think it took several years for you as well, right? For us to crawl out of like that place and really like overcoming on a daily basis, like maybe even sometimes thousands of times per day, the old thinking, the old version of you, and blending with the new thinking and having faith and having trust and like practicing, collecting evidence and seeing your glimmers and persisting no matter what, and relapsing, right? And shitty things happening in life outside of this, right? And it's not linear in any way, shape, or form. You don't just go, woo, right? Polybagel. You know, it's you stay the course and you tick the boxes on a daily basis. You don't see that movement. You don't experience that change, you know, from day to day, but you do get to a point where you look back and you're just like, oh, holy fuck, things have changed. And I remember it took for me, like at the place that I was at, only just a couple of months of putting into practice the things that you had given me to be like, oh my God, like I'm now only having a PTSD episode like once a week or twice a week, which to me, it was like, I was living in that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I didn't even have a glimmer of nervous system regulation throughout my day, right? That's the level that I was at. So it was like just within a couple of months, just ticking those boxes, persisting, even when I wasn't feeling any different. It's hard, and you can say how you felt about it, but I just feel like, you know, we talk about this and we're like, yeah, no, we're like healed and everything's great. But like, it was a very difficult journey. And yes, I believe that you can absolutely 100% completely heal from anything at this point, just seeing what I've seen with people. I mean, I literally watched a woman at the last Dr. Joe Dispenza event. If you've never heard of Dr. Joe Dispenza, I highly suggest like looking him up. The last event I went to, I saw a man who was paralyzed for 22 years get out of a wheelchair and start walking for the first time. And I saw a woman who was born blind. She was in her 50s, has never seen anything in her whole life, wake up with vision and see her own face for the first time. So like, whoa, you cannot convince me at this point. One of my friends came, she had a big malignant tumor in her breast. It was gone in 3 days of meditation. So like, and if you've never heard of this stuff before, what I'm saying might sound absolutely absurd. I have witnessed this firsthand. I have cured my own incurable, according to the doctor, autoimmune disease with your help, with using the Dr. Joe stuff and going to the retreats but it did not happen overnight. And there is a lot of doubt and there is a lot of fear and there's a lot of fucking dysregulation on the way. So I just want to like put that out there that like, that is why you say the number one thing is commitment, because yes, it's very hard. Would you say that that was true for you as well?
Yeah, I mean, I was at the place as well where I didn't believe it was possible. It was like I was so out of touch with myself that, and with who I truly am, that I couldn't see a pinprick of light. And I know that place, and it made me doubt. It almost felt like I was being gaslit by my own self. Made me doubt everything good that I ever knew. It made me doubt, like, yeah, just any sense of hope. And deep in the background, because you can never wipe the slate clean of 100% of all the love, all the spirit, all that that connection. There was something, and I could feel it, but I couldn't see it. And there was like a little part of me that was in the intangible distance that was like, you're actually going to be fine. You're going to, like, this is a part of your process. Like, you're going to make it through this, and it's going to make sense. And I just somehow connected with that. Amidst all of it, I connected with that because, like you said, like I said, like, what else is the alternative? Like, there's no other alternative. So I was just, it's like, trying to cross, it's trying to, like, I don't want to say bungee jump or like zip line with like a thread of silk. I was like, oh, okay, like trying to zip line, holding onto a thread of silk. Like, it was so delicate, but I held it, and it grew. And then I would have moments where I was like, oh, this is like, I actually am going to heal. Oh yeah, that's why I believe that. Oh yeah, it wasn't just a lie. Like, oh yeah, okay. But at the beginning, it almost felt like a lie. It almost felt like, I don't know, like, I really couldn't connect with the truth of it. I forget what your question was, but yeah, that's what I'm saying. What was your question?
Yeah, just like if you thought the journey was very difficult and that you had to stay the course for several years to be able to get to where you are today. And that there's a lot.
I stopped even thinking about time. That was a big part of it. I stopped even thinking about time. I made this commitment to myself that I was like, okay, in my head, this made sense. I think I told you about this. I was like, 7 years until all of my cells regenerate. So like, in 7 years, I can be a completely different person. So it's like, I don't care if it takes 7 years. I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
And then deep in, even beyond that, there's a part of me that was like, it'd probably take 15 years, maybe 20. And I was like, even if it takes that long, I don't care. Like, there's no other option.
Yeah.
And it's like literally just the worst life ever, or maybe feeling fine, maybe a good life. Like, maybe, I don't know, but like, definitely not this.
Yeah. And that was really helpful to me because you gave me that perspective as well. It was a little bit different, the one that you gave me, where it was just like, yeah, you just have like your whole life to heal. And like, once you started saying that to me, I was like, oh, okay. And then it almost like speeds up the time that it takes to heal, because you're just like not concerned about time anymore. You're just kind of like, okay, well, it's working and I'm getting somewhere. And then you always hit that plateau where you're like, okay, this is way better than when I was here. And I'm still dissociative. I'm still like having panic attacks and whatnot here and there. But like, this is probably the best I can get. Right. And then it's like, no, it's not. And then you go like here and you're like, oh, I only get like glimmers of panic and dissociation now, but like, that's probably it. This is the best I can probably get. Right. It's like, no, that was never the plateau. So like, we go through that as well. It's like thinking things are just like, this is the best you're going to get. Which I thought was interesting. And now I see, like, I'm at a point where I'm like, whoa, if this is like, I would be happy with this. Like, I'm okay with this. If this is my plateau, this is the end of my healing journey. It's not perfect, but Jesus, I don't get panic. I don't even get anxiety anymore, unless it's something really extreme that it makes sense for the situation, right? Like I'm at a point now where it's like, where my husband and I separated in November. Even through all of that pain, I did not have a single PTSD episode or any dissociation, which was like, how? It's like, I'm okay with that. Like, I could ride this out until, the sun sets or whatever. But it's still like, this is still so early on. I mean, we're talking 2 years of starting to work together and do this work and awareness of the nervous system and learning to regulate every single day. This absolutely cannot be the plateau, right? Which is what you were talking about at the beginning of like the more intense states of like bliss or whatever. So
Yep.
let's conclude with this formula that you were talking about, like something that tangible we can give the people who are listening.
Yeah, as you know, like one of the first things I'll share and teach with people is mindful labeling. So awareness of the state of your nervous system, because it's crazy to me that, but this is normal. You can be completely unaware of your nervous system. Like you can have complete total unawareness, like it's an entire blind spot. So you could be actually, your body is highly fight flight. It's very in an aggressive tension state. And you tell people, no, I'm not mad. I am not mad. Right. So you can be completely just disconnected and unaware. And I think for the most part, people do that unintentionally. And or just want to present one way or whatever. But you can have this complete disconnect from what your body's actually feeling. So I think the first step is just being able to become conscious of your nervous system and its states. Panic and dissociation are probably not going to be as relevant for the majority of people. I consider them distinct states of overwhelm or overload. But when it comes to the dorsal and the sympathetic, which is the sympathetic, the high energy, tension, stress nervous system we've all heard about before, fight, flight, fawn type style. And the dorsal, the freeze, shutdown, the stuckness, the blockness, or the depression. To be able to literally feel these nerves in your body, I think changes everything. When you can feel the nerves, and sometimes you can't feel the nerves, but what you can do is you can discern the behaviors, the thoughts, and the sensations that come from those nerves. And then you're like, oh yeah, this is very dorsally, vaguely influenced. And then you can feel the nerves maybe a bit more then. And you can feel the dorsal has a repressing effect, as a suppressant effect. So you can literally feel it suppresses the activity of the subtle muscles around the eyes. You can feel it suppresses the sensation in the chest. It creates a heaviness or a numbness. And it creates a general sense of lethargy or blockness or something like that. For most people, they're going to experience it that way. Maybe a cloudiness in the head, a fogginess, or a mild, vague numbness. That's how you'll feel the dorsal. And when the dorsal is really strong, it can actually be muting the sympathetic, because the sympathetic we feel differently. We feel as like a raw nerve of tension. We feel that stress in the body. We feel a sort of tightness, strain, contraction in the chest, pressure in the head, all of those different symptoms. So if you can just feel the difference between these two, and you can just name either the nervous system or the nervous system state, like, oh, this is a shutdown, or this is stress, or this is freeze. If you can just notice and name that, that's going to change everything. And that has to come with non-judgment. It has to come with the ability to just, like a scientist observing something, you're just writing notes. It almost has nothing to do with you. Like if you're watching a lab rat, and like every time the lab rat goes onto the like hamster wheel, you have to like check it off, put a little check, okay, and write the time. You would have no vested interest of like, oh, why did you get on the hamster wheel again? I hate this lab rat. You would just do it. You would just be like, oh, you'd be like, okay, interesting. Like he went on the wheel again, like twice in a row. Okay, just noticing that. That's like, we need to have that like neutrality, non-judgment, that space of just clear seeing with our own nervous system. That is like opening up the windows when you have a house fire, or when you have like a kitchen fire. It's like all this fresh air comes in and you're like, oh, okay, like maybe I can breathe now. So that's the first step. Obviously there's kind of layers to that, but I feel like without that, there's not really anything you can do. That can, if you trust in that, a lot can unwind and unravel on its own, because awareness is curative. Like just the fact that you're aware of it, and now you're more aware that you're making choices that are resonating, or you're placing your attention in a way that's confirming that state or those thoughts that come from that state. All of a sudden you just start to feel more choice. You're like, well, why would I keep feeling that? Like eventually over time, you start to just make different choices. It can take a long time, but just that piece, I think, is what I'd like to share.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, and yeah, you can learn more, like I was saying, if you want to go to Will's page. Do you want to like share your Instagram and like where you normally post stuff?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram at Will, WILL Deroode, DEROODE. I'm sure we'll like connect that on the show notes if somebody like needs to look at it or link it in. And I share information there. I share my life there. I share cool thoughts there and lots of other interesting nervous system related things. And I think it's just all around a good place to connect.
Yeah. Do you have anything that you're offering right now? Like, do you have any like programs or anything like that if somebody really wanted to start like healing?
Right now, I'm just doing one-on-ones. That's my main focus. But I've been thinking about doing, for a long time, I've been thinking about doing neural awareness, like training or like certification or course. And so that's in the works. I kind of have a lot of the stuff on the back end. I'm just really feeling into how I want to present it. And I want to make sure it's taught in a way that is not diluted and that the people who learn it are really like able to receive it and not just like, oh, I got certified in this thing, but they don't really like connect with it. Cause I think this is really profound stuff. Like this is pretty life-changing. I mean,
most people don't come back from PTSD alone. So yeah, I would say it's life-changing. It's profound. Yeah.
Yeah. And it can be the difference. So I'm intuiting between like dissociation and bliss, which is like the biggest night and day difference ever.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I know you experienced bliss at one of the Joe Dispenza events. Like you gave me that inkling, and literally just hearing about your experience of bliss triggered an experience of bliss in me. I don't know if I told you that.
Yeah.
Like that's how like the mirroring was that strong.
But like if you're in the lower states and people are like, I'm so blissed out, you're like, I actually hate you. You're like, you can't connect to it at all. And you just like want that person to go away.
Yeah. It feels like when somebody's drinking coffee and you're tired.
Yeah.
They're just, everything they're saying is annoying.
Yes.
It's like, shut up.
Yes, I agree. Okay, wonderful. So yeah, you can learn more about Will on his Instagram. And yeah, I hope that this, and also you can go to YouTube and look up like lots of videos, Deb Dana, people like that, Stephen Porges, who's the creator of polyvagal, and just learn a bit about how your vagus nerve functions. Like you were saying, is just the awareness alone is freeing. I mean, I've seen what it does when I explain this stuff, just that explanation to my clients and just creating the awareness. They're just like, holy shit. There's obviously more to it, but I just wanted to make this episode so that people can really understand that no matter what they think they have, or they're struggling with, or they think they are, right? It's not you, whether it's mental health issues or nervous system issues or addiction or disease, or that is like, I see it as like a sludge that is covering like who you actually are, that needs to be cleared away. So thank you very, very much, Will. I was so thrilled that we did this. And is there anything else that you'd like to say or share?
Just want to wish everybody an amazing day, and thank you so much for tuning in. Sending a lot of love from Canada, which is where I'm at.
Awesome. Thank you.